We started it the first time I was on television here in Indianapolis. It was at the State Fair, and it was so long ago that they didn't have big studios for the television. It was in the radio building, you know, when you first drive in to the State Fair grounds on the nearest Fall Creek, that first building.
Right.
And the studios were really tiny, and the cameras were really, really big. So there was very little space for me or an audience. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any recollection?
I did not see them. No, I didn't. And I didn't realize what I was missing until, you know, later on, well, gee, I should have tried to get in there, you know. Well, I used to read my mail on the air. The kids would send in their birthdays, and I would do birthdays. Any child that sent in a picture, we would put the pictures up on a long wall, and they would pan that, which means taking the camera, going like this. And so anyone that sent their picture in could see their picture live.
Right.
And so then sometimes I would read, and I got a letter from someone saying how much they liked me. It was written in a manner that made you feel like it was probably from an Asian child. And instead it was really from some ornery person who made the words, as you read them, came out quite differently than it looked like. And I read it live, and I didn't even know it. And my whole camera crew was on the floor. They were just in hysterics, and I didn't even know what I had said or anything, you know, but it was very, well, after I found out, it was quite embarrassing. Not to me. I was just right over my head. And Juan 2, I believe it started off with. And when I saw it in the studio, I said, there's no way in the world I am interviewing with a lion there. And they said, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, he's trained. He knows, he's completely trained. No. Lions aren't trained. You know, he's a big animal. So anyway, they kept him, the lion, over in one place. And I did an interview with the guy. I said, and when we come back from this commercial, I'll have a surprise for you. The surprise was I was hiding behind the curtain, and I got one of the guys to go in and do the rest of the interview with this lion. Well, the lion decided he had had enough, and he took off with the owner holding on his knees, being pulled across the studio, and then the lion flipped out his paw and knocked over one of the cameramen, and the other cameraman was following him, and he went out the back door with the guy still holding on, and I'm going, well, I'm glad it wasn't me. I can remember did lots of commercials for Burger Chef, and which was for your audience, they wouldn't probably remember it, but it was
you'd be surprised.
Before McDonald's. Burger Chefs were very, very popular here, and when they would open a new one, they'd hire Bob or me to come down and be there for the opening day. And it was, you know, the lines would stretch around the block, coming in to get a picture and autograph and so forth.
Yeah.
So those were things that obviously we were doing something that touched them, that they were excited about.
Right.
Well, I got to interview Mrs. Ford when she came, when President Ford was president,
Sure.
and she came here when they opened a new edition of the Children's Museum. And I mean, of course, the museum had been there forever, but they enlarged it. And she came, and they arranged for me to do an interview with her. Some of the news people didn't even get to, so I was very thrilled about that. And when Captain Kangaroo came to town, I interviewed him. I tried to since I am a teacher and cared about education, I tried to always make the show educational, but not let anybody know. You know, because people come home from school, they don't want to, I don't think that anyone wants to just turn on, oh, let me be more educated. You know, they wanted to watch cartoons. I wasn't wondering why they were watching. I know why they were watching. They like cartoons. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't stick some things in between, as long as you made it interesting, and they were fooled into thinking that it was entertainment instead of educational, you know. So.
Where did you teach at? What schools did you teach at?
Oh, I taught music all over IPS, because as a music teacher, you usually were assigned at 2 schools, and I didn't teach always. I mean, I taught, but I was not teaching, and I taught. I just thought it was cool to have me as a music teacher.
Absolutely.
And then one funny story about one of the kids. I've always done, since I was a music teacher, I've always done stuff with the symphony, and so I performed with the symphony, like doing Peter and the Wolf and all those kinds of things. And several times I got to be the person that would introduce the orchestra, if they hear the strings, hear the this, and all that kind of thing. And so I was doing something along that line, and I was only teaching 3 days a week, so it didn't interfere except for one day. My school was going over to Clues Hall for this show at the same time the same day I was teaching. So I just put a fancy dress over, you know, in a garment bag, took it along, left the kids with their homeroom teachers, went backstage, changed clothes, went out, did my bit, and then on the way home, on the bus, one of our kids said, "Oh, just like you, Mrs. Hodge, that lady on the stage."
Was your K through 4, I take it?
No, I think he was in junior high. not the swiftest one. So, and then the fall that I started the show was also the fall that they opened Clues Hall. If you look at the cornerstone, it'll say 1963. And they had a big time opening, grand opening, you know, with the floodlights, the whole thing. And I got to be involved with that. I got to actually interview the grown-ups instead of the kids. And one of the department stores loaned me a dress to wear, and I bought some shoes. I still have them because they were the fanciest shoes I've ever had. Really little gold heels, really high. And I got to, and it was a gold dress, you know, and I was slim and looked, ooh, you know, very fancy. So, you know, that was not something that was my normal kind of life, but it was fun to get to do. When I started doing the show, there were only 4 stations, and we had grown-ups that watched the show, because people would come home from work and they'd be tired. They want to just sit back and have a beverage and watch cartoons. So I had grown-up fans as well as little kids. It was a kids show, but you know, they put up with it to have the, and I wore short skirts, so you know. And so, you know, and they watched the cartoons, and and Bullwinkle and Rocky were on during the hour and a half. I was on from 4:30 to 6. But 15 minutes of that was Bullwinkle and Rocky, you know, which is pretty grown up.
Oh yeah.
And so the last time that I saw Gone with the Wind in the theater was out there at the Irving Theater, because I wanted my son to see it in real life. He wasn't that old, but not that he remembers it, but nevertheless I wanted him to see it in a theater. So we went out to see it. That's so that when I think of Irvington, I think of that. I know that. I remember they always had a really, really good popcorn machine.
There you go.
I love popcorn.